In this video tutorial for Shape version 5, we are going to look at some object properties. We include how to create an object, discuss the object's tree, the general properties of an object, and the so-called primitive tab. Let's begin with creating a torus. We select the torus in the top toolbar, then click on the top viewport and drag out our torus to a certain size. Click again, drag out the second radius. Now a new object has appeared in the systems folder of the objects tree on the right. It gets a default name SPS0, like particles system 0, and subsequent objects get the same name but with adding 1 as a number. And this name appears in the general properties tab, which is underneath the objects tree. Here we can change the name to something more descriptive, which is very important to do when more and more objects are mixed. So do not forget to hit enter after you make an entry. In this general properties tab we have a color for the object, which is not visible as long as the object is selected and this show status button is set. If we deselect this show status button, then we can see the actual color. We can change the color by hitting the color swatch and select a different color, and we can hide the object by disabling the visible tick mark and re-enable it. This affects the visibility in all operations like rendering for this object. There is this axis button, edit axis, so we can display the coordinate axis of the local coordinate system that is tied to this object. Let's change a few numbers here and then rotate the object in order to see the difference compared to the global coordinate system. You can see how the local coordinate system is rotated with respect to the global coordinate system. Now, particles have been an important part in Shape since the beginning. In recent years they have been replaced by this mesh, but we still have uses for them in vector visualizations or some rendering modes, and therefore we can add particles to an object. Let's say we want 1000 particles of size 2, all of them displayed and distributed throughout the volume. We click on distribute and these particles show in the viewports. Let's increase the size of this viewport to make them more visible. Here they are. Bigger size makes them easier to see. There you go. Let's display all of them. Now, a very important property is the render property, where you can select from a list of properties. Either you use the mesh for rendering, or the particles, or the hydrodynamics, or some additional properties that are not relevant for this course. Let's get rid of the particles. We do not need them, and continue to work with the mesh. Now, if you have several objects, like an additional sphere, then we have more than one object in the system folder, and we can now move them up and down one compared to the other with these buttons. we can copy an object. Let's say we want a copy of the torus. Click on this copy icon, then you have an exact copy of the torus. Let's call it torus 2. Torus 2. This name will appear fully later on. We can change the color, and very importantly, now we can change some basic properties of the primitive. We go to the primitive tab, and here we have a list of the basic properties, like the inner radius, which we can change to, let's say, something smaller, so we can see the new one, and 60. So we have these two tori in there. Switch off the first one, go to the general tab and make it invisible, as well as the sphere. Okay. Now we're going to manipulate the primitive properties of this torus. There are several properties depending on what geometry we have, like the segments, the number of segments that are in the mesh. You can increase the number of segments or decrease it to make the object simpler. It is always good to make it as simple as possible, because the more geometry we have, the longer it takes to process it. We can change the line width, which may be important for publications that require sufficiently large lines. And the number of divisions makes an additional refinement of the mesh for manipulating the vertices. We can increase the vertex size, so we can see the individual vertices for vertex manipulations, which we'll look at later on in another video. And we can change these theta min and theta max values and have a look at what this does. This changes the geometry of the object and cuts out part of the torus. Other geometric objects have similar functions. This increases substantially the versatility of the structure. Now, that's for the primitives, and the general tab has an interesting property since all these properties are shared among the objects. For example, if I select multiple objects in the systems tree, I can operate on them together. So now I can make them all visible with a single click, change their show status, including the color. I can give them a common color, and then uncheck the show status, and you can see that they all have the same color, the ones that have been selected, except the torus 2, which has not been selected. An important property of the objects tree is that you can add new folders, which helps to organize your sub-objects, which sometimes may go into several 10 or even 100 small objects. Let's say all the tori, you want them in this system folder. Then you click and drag them into these folders. You can then change the name of the folder to something like tori, and thereby organize your objects tree. For example, here all the spheres, and drag your sphere into this folder. Okay, thank you very much.